What's this? A review? Since when? Well, I usually avoid this kind of shit. My videos are unscripted and unfiltered. You get me how I am if you met me outside somewhere. So for me to do a scripted review, it's gotta mean something, right? Well, yeah, fucking obviously. I got to thinking the other day about games and loyalty. Weird fucking combination, right? Well, hear me out here. As somebody who'd been gaming since he was a kid and the NES was the hot new shit, who played video games even during his time in the military, and then later got into tabletop gaming and shit due to some friends, means something. There were certain games I played since way back, like Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, and Resident Evil. Used to be I couldn't go wrong with those. And then shit changed, and for the worse. I won't get into the minutia of it, but just that those franchises in particular turned and left me the fuck behind. End of that story. End of the whole fucking point of this review. D3 Publishing, and in particular the Earth Defense Force series. You see, my brother and I first got into this acid trip of a game series when we still lived in a little apartment in North Carolina, outside of Fort Bragg. When we weren't doing tabletop games with our neighbor, we looked around for decent games at a local shop, and one day we find these two pretty inexpensive games we'd never heard of, Oni-Chanbara and Earth Defense Force 2017, both from D3. We're going to leave Oni-Chanbara for now. That could be another review all by itself. So EDF 2017 was an oddball right out of the gate. The cover art was a single soldier in red armor wearing a riot helmet, carrying a rifle, standing in front of the Earth, and some other stuff in the background we had no recognition of. It was a used copy, it was cheap as hell, we figured why not. We got it, realized they had a local co-op as a bonus, and got started. Getting started was all it took. My brother and I grew up with weird, cheesy old sci-fi flicks full of giant ants, aliens, UFOs. You know, we watched stuff like Them, Tarantula, you name it. On the other side of things was our love of Japanese kaiju flicks, like the kind of movies Toho's been kicking out the door for years. Why is any of this relevant? Well, because Sandlot made a game that was full of damn near all of that at the same time. The game looked pretty bad at a glance because the graphics weren't cutting edge and the gameplay wasn't innovative, or whatever AAA studios like to call it. We came from the age of NES games, though, and we saw how shit some early 3D graphics were. That was kind of secondary to us, the gameplay. See, that's where this series is going to shine if you're not blinded by some need for top-end graphics or innovation. Giant ants swarmed over buildings, huge spiders leapt overhead. Meanwhile, shit exploded at random because some NPC soldier had a rocket launcher. Tanks crashed into other tanks. Bugs you just killed flew into orbit at high velocity or ragdolled through collapsing buildings. A giant, totally not Godzilla, showed up and then nuked us and our entire squad out of existence. Game over. All the while, we're laughing our asses off and having a fucking blast. We were hooked, and that was despite a bunch of negative reviews and people bitching that it was tedious and boring. So this was back in 2008. The game came out in 2006 in the States. Well, here we are in 2024. We haven't missed an EDF game when we could help it. We even went to the trouble of buying a couple of the games on import to make sure we had physical copies. We've played EDF 2025, World Brothers, EDF 4.4. Yeah, I'm leaving it in. 4.1 and EDF 5. We even played Insect Armageddon, which was a Western take that Vicious Cycle did under D3. We missed the two PS2 games that came out before 2017, which was mostly because they never got a US release. The fuck can you do? The point is, EDF games have been the one series lately that I feel is yet to try to punch me in the balls, insult me, or stab me in the fucking back. So when we finished EDF 5 and then we finished World Brothers, we were waiting for news on EDF 6. And then shit happened. From my understanding, D3 had a lot of trouble after the tsunamis hit, and I don't think Sandlot works with them anymore. We waited patiently, but as time went on, the date for any kind of Western release got real hazy. Eventually I said fuck it, and then off to Play Asia I went to pre-order an English language copy. Those are listed under the Asian copy on the store site if you happen to be interested. Took a couple weeks after the official release date to arrive due to overseas shipping, but man, I have not been fucking disappointed. The new devs at Clouded Leopard looked back at the preceding games that Sandlot did and decided, you know what, that's not fucking weird or insane enough. You know that Terminator time travel thing? Let's do that with giant spaceships, aliens, and mutant insects and shit. And at the time of this review, we've played over 10 hours of the game, and we just recently got a trophy for 5% completion. Yeah, 5 fucking percent. So the game starts you as an alleged EDF rookie in a bunker underground, getting confused by some scientist who claims to know you before you get insulted by some jaded captain who decides he needs to remind you what the EDF's supposed to do. It's weird and a bit awkward, but it's pretty damn funny, especially if you were ever in the military. So after you do a little bit of training with some other rooks who couldn't even get issued any body armor, you head up topside. This is where the tone seems to shift from the usual games, at least a little, and I wasn't fully expecting it. It looks like shit up there. There's nothing left. It's like the future scenes from Terminator, except the bugs ate all of the bones. It's dead quiet and it's barren as all fuck while you're advancing, till you finally run into some of those alien frog things from the earlier games, except they look as beat down and fucked up as your own troops. You fight them, and then a couple swarms advance, and then the mission's over. Over the next few missions or days, they happen, and then shit gets weirder and more kind of grim. Humanity's nearly extinct. These small groups of soldiers with damaged equipment and barely any vehicles are all that's left of the EDF. There's a ridiculous number of these new robotic enemies the captain calls androids roaming the surface, and there's these huge machines pumping strange clouds of purple gas into the air. The sun's nowhere to be seen now, and shit just gets worse from there. Eventually you get a poorly planned fight with a new type of alien mothership, and it ends with you damaging some kind of device underneath it. And then suddenly you get a white screen, and you're back with a normal EDF squad. Sometime around the end of EDF 5, actually. What the fuck? In fact, this is actually an early mission from EDF 5, and you initially wonder if Clouded Leopard added the post-apocalyptic sequence onto EDF 5 and then giggled their asses off before they released it. At first. Till little odd things start happening, things you're going to notice even faster if you played 5. Certain events are slightly different, the bugs are spawning slightly differently. It becomes obvious pretty soon that something's fucked up. Then the scientists from before contact you, rambling about time travel, an alien device, and needing more data. More things keep changing as you progress, leading to another huge battle where things are going real bad. You start to realize shit is worse than it looks, and about then, bam, fade out and time skip yet again. You're back in that underground bunker now, speaking to that scientist again. You're getting berated by the captain again. Then shit changes. Yeah, again. The first attack happens earlier, then later the bunker itself gets attacked. Eventually, after some even worse battles, you're back at the ring-shaped ship again, and then that same event goes down. You'll probably start to think that you're just going to keep doing the time warp again with just these slight changes, but then shit changes even more drastically as you go on. New fucked up enemies start showing up in the future, while the EDF survivors lose more men and get more desperate to run low on supplies and resources and anywhere to hide between battles. In the past, entire game events change, or they happen in the wrong order. Some of the enemies from the future just start abruptly showing up in the past. Shit starts getting so weird that by the 10-hour mark of playing, my brother and I are just pushing ahead with nary a fucking clue what weird alien-type robots and monsters are gonna just show up whenever the hell they feel like it. No, I ain't exaggerating. At one point in the past, some of those beat-up alien frog soldiers from the future just show up and take over a hot spring resort, and then you gotta clear them out. Another stage turns out to be loaded with not only the web-spinning Aranya, but also a bunch of giant hornet nests, and that's before the giant fucking pillbugs come bull-balling in. At one point, the Godzilla-like Argonist thing's replaced with a fucking dragon. This was a dragon, by the way, which we found in a massive underground chamber, which was surrounded by tunnels full of mutated giant ants and spiders. Enough about the plot. It's bad shit, it's fun, we're loving it. But any game plot can be easily butt-fucked by bad gameplay. We've seen it before. Well, if you're an EDF fan, buckle up, because here we go. The gameplay is faster paced, and the environments, especially the cities, remain about as destructible as before, but there's more of a mixture of enemy types in some stages. Another feature we're enjoying is some class design revisions, which have vastly improved most of the character classes. So, Your standard infantry ranger still has a great variety of weaponry, as well as some armor kit options to augment him. From being able to charge through small obstacles to having a magnetic radius to pick up items from further away, there's some decent options that carried over from the last game. Now, though, your grenades and throwable items are mapped to their own button, which is set to your backpack slot, instead of taking up a weapon slot that you could use for another weapon. You have a set number of these usually before you have a resupply timer to refill them. So the big lumbering heavy weapons fencer class still has a pretty wide array of powerful weapons, everything from Vulcans and giant shotguns to cannons and long-range missiles. He can still equip one weapon to each arm or shoulder, and you got two different loadouts to switch between. However, there's been some improvement to the armor kit for this class in particular. There's more devices designed to improve his recoil reduction, his aim speed, and his general movement, and they seem to work better. With the right items, this two-legged tank feels immediately a lot better to play, and he's more effective in my opinion. But the class I feel got the best improvements has gotta be the support specialist, the Air Raider. In the past, they were good to have on a team due to their ability to call in special vehicles, airstrikes, orbital lasers, and shit like that. But that being said, their array of personal defense or attack options were painfully limited, usually to stationary limited-use auto turrets and limpet guns. That's this spear-like weapon which could be detonated once you hit an enemy with it. Playing an Air Raider solo was tough to damn near impossible in some cases. Holy shit did that change in this game. The limpet guns feel like they got a general damage buff, but the bigger game changer for the Air Raider is the addition of drones. Fucking loads of combat drones were added to deploy for different situations. You want some on-call direct fire? Equip the machine gun drones, just fire a tracker dart and other thing you want shot. More indirect? Try the mortar drones or the mini bombers, just tag an area to hit. There's this ridiculous array of combat support drones, which is why it's great that you can actually equip two different attacker support devices, plus your limpet gun. You want two drone types? Do it. You want a standard airstrike plus a squad of gun drones? Done. The other nice thing about this is that you can equip a third small defense drone or a throwable item from the backpack, kind of like the Ranger does. You still have a dedicated slot for a vehicle, too. The first vehicle I got was an APC, known ridiculously as the Grape. Yeah, I have no fucking idea why, but it's always been called that. Speaking of, adjacent to the Air Raider, the vehicles mostly feel like they got an armor buff, at least in the normal difficulty so far. So for example, the Grape feels way more resilient than it was before, and it got faster. I ended up having a lot of fun just calling it down to zoom around and pop off autocannon shots. A couple of the tanks and mechs I've tried so far seem to have similar changes. I usually ran out of ammo long before the vehicle would have got destroyed. With all these options, you've got an Air Raider packing about as much kit as a fencer in this game. If it feels like I mostly talked about the Air Raider though, just wait a minute. See, now we come to the part I'm less thrilled about. You may have noticed that earlier I said the revisions improved most of the character classes. Much as I'm sad to say it, I think the metaphorical fucking ball got dropped and then kicked down a busy highway when it comes to the wing diver. This class feels like it didn't get the same positive attention as the others. Believe me, I'm going to get into why I feel that way. So if you've seen any of the multiple videos, streams, shorts on the channel of us playing EDF 4.1, or that Minecraft looking World Brothers, or even the more realistic looking Iron Rain spin-off, you're going to notice the female character soaring and zipping around with a jetpack and different weapons. In 4.1 she's a wing diver, though in Iron Rain any trooper that picks the jet lifter class gets the flying gear. In World Brothers, a bunch of the flying characters were based on wing divers dating back to the original PS2 games up to 5. But either way, they were great for soaring around and gliding across the battlefield. It makes up for the way lighter armor, especially considering they usually had a pretty wide array of energy weapons, except for Iron Rain, which they used the stuff everybody else did. Then EDF 5 happened. Yeah, my issues with the changes to what was my favorite class date back to EDF 5. See, her jetpack ability seemed mostly similar to the previous games, but the majority of her non-explosive or homing weapons were subjected to an odd design decision. For some reason, the devs decided they needed to overhaul how her energy weapons should work, and I still don't fucking get it. I'm gonna do my best to explain this shit. So if you don't know, wing diver energy weapons either run from a weapon battery in the thing itself or directly from the battery power in her jetpack. When the weapon would empty, the recharge would draw from her pack battery. That meant you had to pay attention to your energy when you fired or reloaded, or you might be getting mauled by ants instead of flying away to safety. In the past, you'd fire multiple shots from some weapons or hold down the trigger for sustained energy fire. Then you could stop it just by letting off the trigger. When EDF 5 released, I found out that wasn't how it worked anymore. With the exception of explosive weapons like the plasma shot, you now have to hold down the trigger to charge up a weapon. Once you release the trigger, the weapon starts firing for the same amount of time you held the trigger. There's a number of fucking problems with this, let me tell you. You can't seem to stop the weapon from firing once it starts. No, you really fucking can't, regardless of what you're doing, with the exception of certain enemy attacks canceling it out. That means your weapon keeps firing if you're trying to jetpack jump to safety, or you're maybe trying to not friendly fire another player who got too close. It fires until it either reaches the time the trigger was held, or it drains the battery, which makes your armor overheat and then it stops working. I think you might be able to stop it by switching weapons, but by then it's already drained that much of your battery. So I probably don't need to explain that this change can cause some serious fucking inconveniences, especially in the tougher, more hectic battles. See, having the armor locked down in the middle of a big fight is the worst thing for a winged diver, because it usually means you're about to get mauled to fucking death. This weird change was even applied to the previous single-shot weapons, like the lightning bow, which didn't make no damn sense at all. That was annoying, but at least if your pack battery was juiced up, you could still jump and glide well enough. It didn't solve the combat efficiency issue with your weapons in 5, but it helped offset it. Yet for some reason she feels worse to play in EDF 6. Her weapon charge mechanic's still identical to the last game, but now the jetpack somehow feels weaker. Her jump and glide time seems to have been reduced, so to be fair, they did adapt the boost roll evasion move from Insect Armageddon, which at least gives her some more evasive options. That can help. It's still a bit disappointing though that she can't use jet-assisted soaring moves like the Jet Lifter from Iron Rain, or the Jet class from Insect Armageddon. Just the whole time while playing EDF 6, I couldn't help but feel let down by the changes to her mobility, especially since I was constantly getting these charge weapons. It took hours before I got a normal laser rifle and I didn't have to rely on a plasma cannon at dangerously close ranges. Now, one other thing I should mention isn't going to be as much a negative to some folks, which is the difficulty curve at later stages. Like most other EDF games, there's more enemies getting introduced as the game progresses. This one's not shy about spawning different types in some stages. The variety of enemies in stage can make for a chaotic and fun as hell experience, but they can also get frustrating, especially at higher difficulties and without multiple players. Now, depending on your class and gear, if you're playing alone, there's some stages which may force you to either lower the difficulty or come back later with more armor and better gear. This ain't gonna be much of a surprise to folks who played the other games like we did, but it might piss off new players pretty quick. There's certain enemy types that can just get fucking aggravating when they're combined. There's this new alien species in 6, which is equipped with different ranged weapons and shields. I think they're called the Krull. And this means that sometimes you could be getting rained on by explosive plasma while you're taking an insane crossfire from laser shots, all the while giant hornets are raining spears down on your head from all directions. You know, you take this combined with the fucking insane number of enemies in some of the later stages, it's going to test your awareness, your gear, and maybe your patience if you didn't prepare yourself properly. Now, as far as I'm concerned, none of this is a significant blow against the overall game. Every game's got problems, no matter how much you love it. EDF 6 is weird, it's fun, and it can be a fucking riot in a local co-op with a friend or some family. It's also not a short game. This shit checks in with around 147 missions or so. So even if you're all in for the alien war, you ain't fucking finishing this game in one go. No. The only real problem with Earth Defense Force 6 right now is a matter of availability, unfortunately. With all the problems D3's been dealing with lately, EDF 6 isn't available outside of Japan unless you get it imported. I mean, on a side note, World Brothers 2 actually got delayed until May right now, even in Japan. If you've got a PS4 or PS5, You can get an import copy easy enough. Ours came from Play Asia. But if you're on Switch, PC, or Xbox, that's a different story right now. I haven't seen any specific word on when the domestic Western release is going to be, if it's going to happen, and if it does, which systems are going to have it available. But hey, to close this shit out, EDF 6 is a lot of fun if you want a weird, hectic action game where you're blasting the hell out of giant bugs and aliens. It's a lot of fun with a friend as long as you're both up for it, but you better be ready before you hit the higher level stuff. If you can, get it imported. Otherwise, fingers crossed that Clouded Leopard and D3 can get it distributed to the Western market eventually. Hey, but thanks for checking this out.